Hello, everyone. Good morning. And thank you for attending. This is the week 5 session. And so, since we are live, I am also going to say hello to the people inside of the Brushfire session. So if you're joining on Brushfire directly, or if you also click the link to go into the YouTube view, I just want to say greetings to everyone, and I hope everyone had a very happy and blessed Easter. And today, we're going to be doing a bit of a recap, but I will also provide you with the ability to join the session through StreamYard. And so I'm putting a link in the chat on both YouTube and in the Brushfire chat platform. Again, our preferred platform interaction is in the Brushfire platform. So make sure you do log in there to view so we can record your attendance as well. But I'm putting in a link here. And so you can set your microphone and video preferences. And then when it comes time to the open discussion area, I'll let you join this way just so you see how it is to collaborate on Brushfire. So I'm just typing this in here for the platform. And then I'm just going to put it in from a host standpoint on the other side. Okay, great. So now just to recap what we've been reviewing. So again, this week, this is on the 5th in terms of the original broadcast. Those of you catching this on demand, of course, the link for live collaboration will not be available. However, I do want to make sure you have the ability to interact. And if you have any questions, please still use the link to submit ideas and feedback, which you'll see when you log into the Brushfire platform. And so today, we're going to be reviewing some tools and some examples for an action plan. And then I'll also recap the design thinking process, because we want you to also, besides defining an action plan, we want you to also think about other areas where there may be some impact. And then we've received feedback from you in terms of other types of content and information you'd like to see. So I'm also going to review with you some additional recordings and additional resources, and I will make an update to the syllabus, so you will be able to get access to this additional information and additional links in the updated and final version of the syllabus resources, or may just share it as a separate document, whatever is going to be the most convenient for the team to receive the information afterwards. So first, I just want to say this morning, if I do see some people online, and greetings to Gail Braxton as well. Thank you for some of the comments here. I want to make sure any remaining questions you have are also addressed. So thank you to everyone who's been everyone with the submission of feedback through the ideas and feedback form. We do have several questions related to Zoom, and so I will be doing a little bit more and showing you some more resources. I've created a playlist on YouTube, and then I've also shared a playlist, a saved playlist, so you can get additional details there based on what you've done. But what I would really enjoy would be to get your feedback on what went well with your Easter Sunday service, and if you had services throughout Holy Week, If you have any feedback or lessons learned related to that, please share that in the ideas and feedback form. I know some churches were having additional events besides the main Sunday worship service. So if you were having multiple services, or if you did a sunrise service, if you had hybrid services, again, those of you who were a part of the discussion previously around Easter service and overflow rooms, I'm really interested in understanding how did that work out for you? Did you have any feedback regarding the way the setup for overflow rooms worked for you? What do you think could be improved if you either didn't use the overflow rooms, or if you use them, but you have some opinions in terms of a better way to do it? So thank you again for your feedback. And so now we're going to get into the action plan discussions. And so one thing I want to recommend as you think about your tasks this week, as we are in the April 5th week of the session, to consider signing up for Google for Nonprofits if you have not done so already. I'm going to actually take you to the website. So just one moment as I transition and show you a different page here. So what I'm going to do is some of this I'm showing now because a few people are not always able to make it for the discussion group session. So you may have some questions in advance. So I want to make sure there's appropriate time for feedback. So in here, I'm going to share one of my tabs. So right now I'm using StreamYard, and we have the ability to share the full screen, an application, or a tab. So I'm going to go to the tab where we have information about TechSoup.org. So for access to Google for Nonprofits, there's one step you're going to be going through, which actually launches into a third-party platform. You should check to see if someone at your church has already signed up for TechSoup. So actually, I'm going to go to the help here so you could see how you're able to set up. So if you're going in terms of eligibility in the United States, so churches, in terms of Google for Nonprofits, all churches are able to access Google for Nonprofits from the Google perspective. TechSoup may have different requirements at different points in time in terms of how they validate nonprofits. So right now, they are managing this to the 501c3 perspective. And this is important for you to note because some churches are registered as nonprofits on the state level, but then there have been a few either churches or other organizations that are affiliated with churches or some of the conventions where they may be organized at the state level and they don't have the federal 501c3. And so because of this, it's useful to identify this within TechSoup. If you do not have 501c3 and you still want to leverage Google for Nonprofits, let me know or send a note to the contact information for the Google for Nonprofits team, and then we'll see if there's a process to make sure there's an alternative eligibility check. But right now, the standard process is with TechSoup. The other thing I want to show you with TechSoup is that you have what we call validation tokens. So validation tokens, after you sign up for TechSoup, and you become eligible to receive services at a discount or products at a discount through TechSoup, you will have the ability to sign up for, again, a lot of different types of services, different products from different companies, but certain companies, Google and the Google for Nonprofits program included, certain ones will need you to get a what they call a validation token from TechSoup, and once you get that from TechSoup, then you come back to the site for Google for Nonprofits, and then share that information so we know that you are a part of the you've received your validation, and you're considered to be your nonprofit status has been validated by this third party. So this is used just to validate the relationship. And so this is what it looks like. It's just a bunch of numbers and letters, and this is probably the part people will sometimes initially try to figure out, because it may be a little confusing at first, because you go through this process and then there's this token and back and forth. So if you have any issues, always just go to the help, and then it'll explain this to you and explain the process. So basically, for your first part would be to either log in or to join. There may actually be an account already set up for your church, and you might not know about it. And this is fairly common because TechSoup has been around for a while, and some churches may be using this to get discounts, maybe for some computer hardware or software, other resources. So it's possible that someone working, it could be from years ago. So really, first, just check to see if anyone is familiar with TechSoup, or if they've actually gone through and created an account. If anyone has an account created already, and again, this is valid for churches, or if you're doing this for other nonprofits, because many of you participate in a lot of different events and activities and are board members of a lot of different organizations. So this will be the same process for those. But basically, if there's one person who's already signed up for TechSoup, they have the ability to add additional users who can log in, and maybe they have different roles associated with the organization. So it's important to have someone, I would say at least 3 types of roles, who should be able to access this. One would be a person who has signing authority. And so again, someone, either a trustee or the pastor, preferably the pastor, in addition to the trustee and a technical resource. But again, someone who will be able to actually agree to the terms of service on behalf of the church. And so in that case, usually that would be the pastor, but sometimes it may be a trustee, depending on how you've defined those roles. And then there should be someone, again, with the ability to validate information from a financial standpoint, because there'll be a verification of certain eligibility from that perspective. So your tax employer identification number, the EIN number, is something you may need to share in order to validate your status. Other information where someone who's normally responsible for the financial part may have access to that. Again, that might be a trustee, but it also may be someone in a different role. So again, you can have different users who can log in and those who can provide other information. And then finally, a role that's actually really important when it comes to the technology part is someone who's your technical contact, or someone who'd be an administrator on the technical side. Because for things like these validation tokens, you're going to be going back to the Google for Nonprofits environment, and will be logging in information. And this information, when you sign in, you'll be able to take the validation token, and then with the validation token, you can turn on different services. And so within Google for Nonprofits, you start here first, and now we'll recap the steps afterwards, but I wanted to deep dive into TechSoup since that tends to be where things get a little bit more confusing for people. But what you would do is you log in, and if you have a Gmail account, you can just log in with a normal Gmail account initially, because it's just your account to manage Google for Nonprofits. Once you are in here, you're basically managing access for your organization for the different features enabled here. So your first part after you log in will be to go, it'll launch you out into TechSoup, so you get the validation token, and then bring it back here, and then you can redeem Google Workspace, which gives you access. This was formerly known as G Suite, but you have the business version. So this is the value of it again. So for nonprofits, this is free. For businesses, again, usually like small businesses or Business Plus, it's $3 per user per month. And when you think about user, this means how many people need to have an email address within the domain in order for this to be effective. So in some cases, it would be necessary not just for the main office staff and the pastor and trustees, but also members of the ministry. You may also have a number of other people where you want to share information. For some churches, though, especially if you're a smaller church, and you're only doing this where maybe you want to leverage free access to Google Sites to host just your website, and maybe share information publicly, but that's about it. So in that case, sometimes you may just have just one user, and it's just your technical user who's set up the site, and no one's actually using it for full collaboration. That's perfectly fine, but you don't have those limitations when you're signing up for the nonprofits because it's all free. And then for large enterprises, again, if you have a larger church or something that might be in the category of a mega church, again, you have the ability, or if you decide within TechSoup, they have certain qualifying questions. And if your church does not agree to some of those questions, they have some questions around non-discrimination, other types of eligibility questions. And so it's not the case. Don't take for granted the answers there. That's why it's important to have someone with the authority to answer on behalf of the church, like the pastor, to review and answer those questions. And so based on that, you may decide not to do the nonprofit version. You may decide to maybe leverage a business version. But in most cases, a lot of churches are able to agree to the criteria, and then you're able to get the free version. So for the video meetings, this is if you're live streaming just within Google Meet, you can have around 100 participants. If you are live streaming and instead of it being just your internal users, again, this is the people who may be maybe in your organization where they have a user account, then you will be able to just leverage YouTube to broadcast publicly or to have another type of streaming integration. So when you're looking at this is based on for internal productivity, the number of participants in a certain session, in the live session, who are able to speak and present and share things. If you're doing a one-to-many, we've had customers with 100,000 users within their organization, still from a security standpoint, but it's 100,000 viewers. They just aren't all talking at the same time. So again, this count is for the number of people who are actually participants who are sharing the screen or other type of communication, and it doesn't reflect the number of people who can actually view it. So again, you have the Google for Nonprofits, where you have Workspace. You also have the ad grants, where you can get, again, in this case, it's $10,000 a month. So you can create text ads and tools. And then for YouTube for nonprofit, so within your actual YouTube channel, you may have an existing YouTube channel today, or you may create a new one after you enroll in this program. You're able to configure additional features for your channel on YouTube when you're a nonprofit. And so this lets you access things like YouTube Giving. And then you have special content, again, Creator Academy allows you to learn how do you create content on YouTube. There's a specific set of lessons for nonprofits that are there. And then you can get access to the Global Creator Studios. Right now, due to the lockdown with the coronavirus and COVID-19, these studio spaces are not currently open. But it looks like, with vaccines and other things that are happening now, when these locations do become open again, then you may have access to go into the creator studios to do additional recordings and items. And then you have the Google Maps. So I just wanted to recap this because in the forums and feedback, we've had some questions about accessing things for Google for nonprofits. And so I wanted to just make sure everyone is aware of what's necessary for Google for nonprofits. And so I do see, I'm going to add to the stream, I see Franklin Dove. So Frank, if you are able to prepare yourself to join, because I'm going to add you to the conversation now before I go to some of the other areas. So we are going to add you to the stream. And so if you are able to unmute yourself, again, anyone else who wants to join, you can leverage the link we shared. And I just want to see if you want to make any comments now or ask any questions. And then if not, I'll give you a few moments to unmute yourself and to speak. And if you want to hold off until later on in the session, feel free to do that. But right now, I will let you unmute and see if you want to share some comments, especially if you have any reflections around Easter.
Yes, I don't know if Herb got a chance to share. I can hold off on it, but we had success. We ended up did not have the success with our overflow room because of the fact that we hooked up a landline to that room, but we ended up not being able to view the live stream. I was able to view the pre-recorded video from Facebook, a Facebook video that had been published before, but we were not able to do the broadcast. And it was something about we was using an old machine with Windows 7 on it. I don't know if Herb got a chance to talk about it. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. So yeah, so then that might be some other limitation on the hardware side. And so one of the things we can also talk about as people are preparing is if you have with the media ministry, if you have some software on a machine and you're doing the switching, so the first thing that you may run into sometimes might be network connectivity of that machine in case, and I think you may have addressed that because you've seen some of that happening before and you were able to switch to a different type of connection. But if you are running any sort of video processing or other type of software on the machine itself, sometimes you might run into some limitations just because of the nature of it, or there may be other security issues or flash. So I can't say for certain what it is. We could probably see if we can deep dive into it a little bit later on around what was actually running on the machine. But this is why there's also a capability to do things that might be more on the cloud, or to use a Chromebook. So, for example, what I'm doing today, I'm using a Chromebook, so I'm not, I don't have a dependency for the things I'm using right now to have anything installed locally. So I'm using StreamYard, which doesn't involve anything that's local. But we may have to step through the full end-to-end setup, because if you were primarily, I think in your case, you're streaming on Facebook. Are you simulcasting on YouTube as well, or is it just Facebook right now?
It's just I don't know if I think we need something else to use OBS to go two different places.
Right.
So we're looking into your suggestion of StreamYard, but right now we're just live streaming to Facebook. But what the intent for the overflow was just to um, log into the Facebook channel and view the live stream in the overflow room off of the land. That's what we was trying to do, and we already had identified that that may not be too good, because there is a definite 30 seconds. It's not, we don't have a soundproof room where we're doing the overflow at, so you got to be able to hear from the sanctuary to the live room. So we was gonna just try to turn it up loud or something, but we still need to do something else besides. But that was all we had time to prepare for, was to just, hey, okay, we just have to send it to Facebook. But we didn't get a chance to do that because I couldn't come up on Facebook while it was streaming.
Oh, I see. So yeah, so this might have been an issue. Just so not necessarily an issue with all the other software on it, but it was an issue with the Facebook viewing itself. Okay, I see.
Yeah, we couldn't. Well, it said something about the browser, because it was a Windows 7 machine, the browser, and they switched me to, when I logged into Facebook, it said, we're going to give you a browser that's more compatible, um, so the view that they gave me didn't allow to do me to view the live stream. It allowed the previous, it showed up the previous week's videos on that was published there, but the live stream was not. It was something, I thought maybe a software issue. There's something there that didn't allow us to view the live stream.
Okay.
There was an icon there. It was an icon there, but when you clicked it, it was nothing. So.
Okay, yes, and so that sounds like it might be, it's more of a it might be definitely a Facebook issue, or Facebook usability issue, and it may also depend on how you were logged into Facebook. I can't necessarily say, because I'm not a Facebook expert per se, but I do think it's useful to actually deep dive into some of the options there. Because there was, and now with the screen you have in the overflow room, was that something where it was projected, or was it a TV monitor?
It was a monitor off of. We just got a big monitor off the computer itself. So it was the actual video monitor of the computer.
Okay. Yes. So one thing we will probably go into a bit more today during the discussion group session this evening will be, if I think if Pastor Harvey is able to join, we'll take a look at the requirements for the scenario where you're using the machine, using the computer just to manage the display of what's actually seen prior to what you share to the Facebook feed itself. So if there's because I think that the setup they had, it was a little different because it wasn't using the stream for the display. I think it was just mirroring, almost like an extended display or an extended monitor, but it was mirroring what was being shown in the and this is so just the way like right now I'm sharing a screen or sharing some things with the with StreamYard with the presentation, it was seeing the view part of it as if you had another monitor for that, and I'm not sure if you're doing something where it's only going to Facebook, if that would have resolved it or not, but that's something we would probably take a look at and explore. And then the other is around the OBS part, because if it's an older machine, you might actually run into some limitations if you try to do like simulcasting or multiple feeds within, just for OBS. I have to take a look at what some of the processing requirements might be. So the pros of OBS, open broadcasting software, that's again, it's open standard, open source option. But if you are using it with your machine that's like the inside of your church, you could potentially run into just machine performance limitations, and so that may impact the quality of the feed, or may impact some of the things that you're able to do. So sometimes you can use that same software in a setup if you're using a virtual machine. So let's say in something inside of Google Cloud or others, where instead of you having a Windows machine that's actually physically located in your church, you're able to just use a web browser and connect to a Windows machine that has a lot of extra processing power. In some cases, instead of a CPU, the way like your typically your machine would have within the church, it might have something that's a GPU that's optimized for graphics and additional power. So you don't have that limitation, but you also don't have to buy another machine or upgrade or do anything like that. So this will let you use the same OBS setup you were using before, and maybe add to it, because that's what's familiar with the team. So you don't have to switch to StreamYard or anything else necessarily. You can, because OBS has a lot of capabilities on its own as well, and it gives you even more flexibility actually in a lot of use cases. So OBS is definitely one of the main ways of doing some of these types of configurations, but you also may need to take a look at the processing requirements. So I don't have an OBS example right now, but I'll see if I can bring up something later on today. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That was good. I don't want to absorb all the time, but Herb said he would speak to in the adventure of hooking that overflow room up. We was able to get, but Herb said he would talk about that. I guess he'll in the forum about the success with the connection we used, that we got better results on Easter Sunday. So that was a blessing there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got better results, and now with your church, did you have to have people pre-register before they arrived, or were you able to just handle the count of the people coming in?
We've been live streaming since March till they went to reduced activity. Even before that, we were doing live streaming, but we were able to continue with a core group, and we were able to get. I think we're 100% vaccinated for the there, and then vaccinated with the the 12 core group that was running the streams and doing and participating in the in-house service, and then was able to influence, the pastor was able to influence the congregation, where when we checked, 100% of the adults were vaccinated on Easter Sunday. So that was a blessing. We had some kids in there though, but we still maintained masks, and we were maintained, because we didn't do the overflow. We put people in groups we may have a group of 10 and then 6 feet separation to the next group, so we were able to get even the overflow people in there because it was large groups of families and friends that showed up, and we were able to seat them together in essentially their own bubble. But it was additional blessings that the adults, when we checked, we just did a check within the congregation, and they would say, and we had 100% of the adults were vaccinated, or at least had the first shot. I think one or two said they had the first shot, but we did screenings at the door, and it was just temperature screenings, and it was no questions. We did temperature screenings, so no pre-registrations, and then of course we had the 12 that was been there since March, so it was. I think added a level of comfort that and the pastor was able to put out and get weekly sanitation where they'll sanitize the sanctuary weekly, and at least every 2 weeks. But we've been weekly and keeping the sanctuary locked down like that.
Well, now that's really great, and you're right. That is a blessing that you had 100% of the adults with the vaccines, even with the first, of the ones requiring 2 doses. There's
Yeah,
a certain amount of protection with the first dose
yeah,
as well. Now the research is still out in terms of how again, if you have a vaccine, if what's happening with transmission, or also if you do have a vaccine, there are at least some cases where people may still get it, but they don't. It's not going to be severe. So yeah, there's still. It's great that you're still practicing the bubbles and the other protocols, even though everyone is vaccinated, because that's in line with the recommendations from the experts as well in terms of our public health officials. So that's actually a really great case study and example of how you were able to have a hybrid service set up with your live stream, and then having the protection for the people who are there in person, and then also the foresight to actually cluster people so they're in their own bubble with their families. And I'm sure they appreciated that, being able to be with families, but still having the proper social distancing. So yeah. Yes, and then also just a question around what do you think is next? I know we were talking a bit about and then
you shut down. I lost audio from you, Corey.
hi, and so apologize. It's a little disconnect and reconnect. So I'm not sure if you heard my
Uh,
question. So I just wanted.
no, I did not.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to ask the question again. So now that you've gone past Easter, 1 second, just want to say sure, just reconnected. It looks like I think this was on my side, my network connection, which happens. Again, that's why we have plan for redundancy and other things. But I want to get some feedback regarding what's next. So after Easter service, there were some things that were being planned and executed for Easter. But what are some of the other areas where you'd like to maybe focus on additional planning? So I think we went through a design thinking exercise around the food bank. So thank you for sharing that. So we were able to go through some of that during a previous session. But what are some of your thoughts on what's next and some additional areas when it comes to feedback on strategic planning for the next phase, or any other questions you have? Because some of the questions you raised were relevant when it came to other attendees as well, echoing some of the same sentiments. So before I go into the some of the other areas, I want to just get some of your feedback in terms of what you see as some of the next challenges you want to tackle, or other things you'd like to address before we end our sessions.
Not that I can think of, because Jean has kind of taken the lead on the collecting of the data for the food bank. She's got some ideas she may present at the discussion group, and then again, Herb uh, uh, is excited about the improvements on the stream. He wants to talk about that on probably at the discussion group. I couldn't get to Brushfire because of this setup, so I thought everybody was on the StreamYard, so that's why I checked in. I didn't, was that. But the we also want, we'll be interested in that simulcast, or not the simulcast, but the share screens are for in the sanctuary, and also to be able to, on the shared screens in the sanctuary and even in the overflow, that to put up text, embed text in with it, so they can, maybe sing along with the songs and stuff like that. That was
Okay.
that has been a thing. So that is the vision, to have big screens in the front of the sanctuary, and at least sing along with something to display, a thing, and then multiple streams maybe, but I don't know what the benefit of there. Uh, I think, I forget what we were. Our sanctuary is certified by the fire department for 100, or it's a small setup that we have. We're not a mega church to be able to. So about 100, I think 150 is what the fire department certified us for inside the sanctuary. So to continue, the pastor wants to continue uh, the improvement or even establishment of the overflow room, and we've been trying different things even before the coronavirus. So to continue to improve the overflow. So, but I know St. Paul had this technology class has definitely been a blessing for the improvement of the to get our ideas across, and to be able to improve the service and even the outreach to the people. So uh, we're able to get the information from this class to be able to head in the direction that the pastor has says that he wanted to see.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm really glad that's useful. And I'm glad you mentioned some of the examples you did, because I will add maybe a couple of more case studies, or at least one more, just to show an example of a church where the building isn't, it's not a large mega church building, but they do have like a monitor. So it's a smaller monitor, but they have it available. And then in their live stream, they do also show the lyrics. But in this case, even without the monitor and the lyrics in the live stream, the way they do their service, they always make sure that when whoever is leading the song, they always make sure people are able to understand the lyrics in advance. So it's just another way of just showing how it all comes together. Because if you because they were doing the prompting beforehand, and then they doing it on the monitor, and then printing it was just an example. And so I'm going to see if I can get that example shared. Let me just see if I can do that here. So what I may do is just spend a few minutes on that, so it's available for the people who are on this session here, and then I'm going to go into some of the rest of the planning, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, and again, anyone else who wants to join on StreamYard can join on the link as well. And so what I'm going to do is, then you can feel free to to stay on here, and again, you can mute or come off mute if you have a question. But I'm going to keep you added to the stream from in StreamYard. I'm just going to switch to a display where I'll be sharing the YouTube channel of the information here from the worship experience they had, just so everyone will be able to take a look at what this is like.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, and then while you're still going to be on, so I'm not going to I may just have you go on mute just while I switch over to this, just in case, because when I hit play, you may hear some of the music on it. I may put it back on mute for the YouTube side, but I'm going to show you a YouTube video of the service at Zion Church Ministries or Zion Worldwide. Again, it's they're based out of Everett, Massachusetts, but the service they've put in place from an accessibility standpoint, they also are hitting those points. But I want to share it specifically because they do have the lyrics showing up. So this is with Bishop Robert G. Brown, and then you'll see Bishop Regina Shearer actually prompting in addition to showing the lyrics. So just one moment while I bring that up, because that wasn't, I didn't already have it there, but I think this is going to be relevant. So I'm going to, what I may do is I'm going to share, and I'm going to maybe put their display on, that session on mute on their side, just so I can review with you some of the other content here. So let's just go through this, and so you can see this end to end. So right now, what they're doing, similar to what we showed with the case study in Oakland with Greater St. John Missionary Baptist Church, where we had the graphics in terms of the countdown. In this case, it's a static graphic, and then they have the countdown. And so I'm going to get here. This is the devotion. And I'm going to get to a certain point when they're doing the prepared songs. Actually, there's one piece I will share here before I do that. So similar to what we were looking at with the other options in terms of accessibility. They also made sure, again, that you have a mail plus a bunch of other options so that people who are able to do mail are able to do that. And then this is, again, how they're structuring the worship experience so people can join. So they're using, they have Zoom, but they also are simulcasting on the website. So if you go to the website, you can go to the website to view, even if you don't have YouTube or Facebook Live or Facebook. And then they are also doing live on both of those. So I'm just going to skip through for a moment so I can get to the part I wanted to share. Oh, there is one other piece I will share here as well. What they also did is something interesting. So before I get into the part, if I can find it, hopefully I can find the one where they had the lyrics overlaid. But what they also did is an interesting use of other video production. So people, I'm not sure if they were just using a green screen here or something else in the background, but as you can see, this was as a part of the service, again, besides the some of the singing and the worship and the dancing, they also had someone where, again, they're from a graphic standpoint, they were able to have this integrated into the service. And so certain technologies here, so again, this could be recorded with someone just being in a different area, green screen background or other ways of producing it. So again, this background isn't actually real, is not actually walking there. But again, there you have different ways of telling some of the stories. And so I'm going to see if I can find, there was something very specific I wanted to find in terms of the lyrics being shown. And if I don't see that right now, again, this is one of the side effects of doing something where we are, let's see, it should, oh, here it is. I think I found it. Okay, here it is. So let me just go back to the beginning here. Okay, so this is what I was trying to share, because sometimes there are songs that were, so here you have people who are able to, I'll unmute briefly so you hear. Okay, so I just wanted to go to that part here so you can see Bishop Regina Shearer said, she did the prompt, "Our God is greater," so people know what to say next, in addition to it being here on the screen. So that's something she's always done inconsistently within the church, so that if you visit the church and if you don't know any of the songs, you can always follow along, because there's always the additional prompting. And so this goes through all the songs. But when you see the lyrics for their live stream, the lyrics are also overlaid here. Now, and you don't see it with this particular view of the church, but on the left side, the top left side of the building in the left corner, there's a monitor. So if you are there physically in the church, you may also be able to follow along. But the point here, the reason why I was choosing this example is when you think about our points around being universal and accessible. So keeping in mind, even though a lot of people have gone to school and they know how to read, don't take for granted that everyone will be able to read what it says. So that's why it's important to have someone, or someone may not be sighted. There are other reasons why someone might not actually be able to follow along by reading. So that's why it's also important when Bishop Regina Shearer does the prompting of the words afterwards. That's still important. So just because you may have a lot of this technology where you have things written, you have it displayed, it's here, it's printed in your bulletins. You may have a lot of different ways for people to follow along with lyrics. We have hymnals. Actually, the Baptist hymnal is available as a Kindle book or as an ebook to download on your phone or on your tablet. So if it's a hymn, sometimes people can follow along there in addition to a physical hymnal. But to make sure it's accessible for everyone, you also want to continue with things like the additional prompting. So now I just want to go back to you here. So finally, you can unmute yourself if you just want to just have some if you have any comments or reactions, or if you want to dive a little deeper into how that's done. I'm just going to see if you want to comment here on some of that and what you saw with the example from Zion Church Worldwide. And I'm going to add links to some of these additional case studies in an updated version of our content afterwards.
Yeah, that looks like a major production. I don't think we're at that level yet, but that would be as the teleprompt, where the actual words on the screen is something the pastor was looking for. If we did something like that, he would, I mean, he would be very excited about that. So, yeah, that I don't know that if we have the editing capabilities. I would be interested in this, see how they do those backgrounds and how they do the add that the words to the thing, and specifically what hardware do we need, or what hardware and software we need to do something like that,
Okay. Yes, that's right. Because I will say within their their media ministry, they do have like their control room, and they have things that they put in place. But however, I will show you now something that's relatively simple you can do in terms of just the text. So not getting into the other production value of what they have with but right now, if you see at the bottom of this screen, I have Easter service recap as text as an overlay, or actually.
Yes, I see it.
Yes. Okay. So within now, this is again, I'll just say a very rudimentary way of doing it, but I'm just going to show this. I did this within StreamYard, so it would be it's something where you don't you can get away without having a lot of extra editing software, but you can still have words displayed and shown. So I can hide this current one inside of StreamYard. It's called a banner, and then I can show it. Or if I have a scripture I want to show, I can put it on. I can have that go as a ticker. So it is possible for you to do this, even as simple as something you can do for the next service coming up if you use StreamYard, because you can configure StreamYard to both do your setup for your live stream, and then also for there's a place called banners. Let me just go through and I'll stop sharing here, and I'm going to share my main page just so you see the StreamYard view of this. And so what you can do is we can share the banners. So it's going to look a little weird right now. Let's see here, but I'm just going to go. What I'm going to do is just focus you on this right-hand side. So you see on this right-hand side, I'm able to, hide and share. Again on StreamYard, I can add a new banner. So what if in my banner here, instead of just being Easter service recap, again, this is not I would say the proper or the most highly produced way of putting the text on it, but I'm just showing you something that actually works. and it's and the overhead is a little bit, is a little bit less. But let's say if you put the different stanzas here in your just add them as banners, and then when that part of the song comes on, you can again show or hide. So now it's hidden. Then I can I can share it. So you have different ways of doing some of these things. From a technology standpoint, you can do things that are again using lots of hardware and software and being really highly produced, and or you can do something where it can still sort of meet some of the same needs. So again, the approach when we're talking about prototyping, the concept of a minimum viable product. What will get you the actual functional result, and then then you'll have a choice in terms of whether or not that just remains a prototype or something you actually show externally. Some of the software people like to use for the video editing and overlays, there's a lot of other software out there, but I think some videos might be leveraging like Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects. You have again, their prices range and vary. So you may have things that are like open source options where it may be free for open source software, but as you know, with your experiences with OBS, it also requires additional overhead of hardware sometimes, or configuration where it may not be as user friendly, but it still may be free. You have some things like StreamYard where it's not the most highly produced, again, but it gives you the ability to do a lot with either for free or for a small dollar amount. The free version, you actually would have a StreamYard logo on the top right. So that's why normally people will just go for at least the minimum so they can remove the StreamYard logo and have their own. But it's possible for you to do that. If your pastor thinks it would be great if you're able to show those the lyrics coming out at the bottom, you'd be able to do that, and you'd be able to do that and still broadcast through Facebook Live. So within StreamYard, again, from a StreamYard standpoint, everything you see here can broadcast directly to Facebook, and it can broadcast to YouTube or whatever else you configure as a destination at the same time, but you're controlling the display part within StreamYard. Now, it's different and maybe separate from what you might be doing with OBS. So you can configure StreamYard to also broadcast and integrate with your OBS. You may have there's a server configuration you put into StreamYard as a destination for that. So you do have those options available. So I just wanted to show you that briefly, and then after this, I'm just going to recap some of the things when we talk about action plans. And then for people who are looking at this in terms of the on-demand replay, we will be sharing links to some of the other resources and case studies for anyone who wants to dig in deeper or to see some of the other sermons, because again, all links to sermons, they all have messages that are really great to look at as well. So, but the main concept I just wanted to convey is that you can do a lot without requiring additional hardware or software purchases. It may be as small as just a small StreamYard subscription. Yeah. Okay. So I want to thank you for participating in this within StreamYard, because again, this is just another way for us to communicate. And for those of you who have this, again, we have different ways of doing the organization. And so if you think about how it's managed and set up, we have all these different options in terms of how we're able to manage the displays. So for those of you who had some questions around what happens, how do you make one side larger or smaller? How do you arrange some of these things? I'm going to share the presentation again now, just so you see that and I'm sharing a tab because again I'm on a Chromebook, so I'm just sharing different tabs. I can also share the full screen. I can make this again larger, smaller, and then also just full screen here. And I'm also going to take off the banner here. So yes, so I just want to say thank you, Frank, for joining. And then so now I'm going to just go through a recap of some of these other concepts, and then for those who are going to be joining us towards the end of the service or I shouldn't say the service, towards the end of the day. With our discussion group, which will be 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be going over other topics. Again, a lot of it will be driven based on some of the questions you had. So now I'm just going to just recap a couple of other items. So again, reminding people from the YouTube standpoint to really take a look at what's available with the Sunday School Publishing Board and some of the tips they provide. But also remember that you can simulcast. So if you're only doing Facebook Live, it's useful to also broadcast on YouTube at the same time. We did talk about, and then there's Vimeo, and then there's also Boxcast. I will show you one other thing from Bethany Baptist Church in Brooklyn. Because they are using what right now what they're doing is they are using a Boxcast, and so let me just go back to the screen so I can just share this briefly with you. Okay, so I'm going to share a different screen here just so you see what's available with this. And so you have different options when it comes to how you manage things live. So again, they may be streaming where you can view the video on the site. And I'm just going to put this on mute right now. And so within their site, okay, they have the pastor. This is Pastor Adolphus Lacey, and then they had a greeting from one of the senators. So that their church is based out of Brooklyn, New York. So Senator Chuck Schumer came in, and so then they did a switch from him back to the sanctuary. And then you also have, at the end of the service, the ability to go into what they were doing live within Zoom. So in this case, what you saw on their website and what someone would see if they're going directly to some of the other places, they also would see if they joined in Zoom. So, but if you look here, they were using Boxcast. So again, we have different types of things that you don't. So I want to make sure it's not like a StreamYard commercial here. It's you have things like Boxcast. You have things like Church Online. There are a lot of other options available when it comes to the ability to set up your broadcast and how you do some of the configurations. I'm showing StreamYard mostly because that's what I'm using right now for this particular class, and also it doesn't require any additional software. But there are some other options available where you can do some things that might be fully configured, and so we'll be able to maybe take a look at some of the pricing for that. But my main recommendation for people, if you're exploring things, or especially if you haven't selected anything just yet, you can connect with the head of the Technology Commission. So Reverend Dr. Alvin Love who leads the Technology Commission of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated. He will be able to help if you are looking for certain types of technologies. There also may be discounts or other things available to support you. And then also, again, with Brushfire, the way Brushfire is configured for this event is different from the way you may configure it for the church events or something else. Brushfire is designed to support both event ticketing in addition to broadcasts. And the way you use it for an educational session is different from the way you'd configure it for just like a conference or a convention. And you can see that just within our convention because we had the configuration over the summer. We had with Digiversity during the summer. You have what was done for the annual session. You also have some of the regions and districts who are using this for either their conventions or congresses, and then for Digiversity. It's a fairly flexible platform, so you can design it and set it up the way you want. Now, I'm not doing the pre-recorded simulated live. So as you saw, where we had someone coming into the stream for this lecture, this was actually live streamed directly. And so the interaction for this is a little different from what you would get with some of the other courses. And then also the configurations of my YouTube channel also give you the experience you're getting here, where you may jump out of Brushfire into YouTube versus staying inside of just Brushfire. So there are going to be some differences in experience, but you have control over what that's like. And so the main point is to leverage Reverend Dr. Alvin Love when you have some questions, especially around vendor selection, because he has a lot of experience with those types of things and understanding which options are going to be the most beneficial based on your requirements. Because the requirements are not only technology requirements, but they are also related to the way everything works end to end functionally. So you can put together a broadcast or a class. You could just use Google Classroom if you want. You can use just YouTube, all these other things. But the requirements, if you think about the requirements for Digiversity, they needed a way for people to register. They needed a way to track who was viewing things. So that's why it's mentioning, even if you're looking at it on YouTube, to go back and just view the courses on demand so it captures that you were viewing it in the platform. You also have the ability to set up requirements so that the instructors have a choice of how they record. So you can record using OBS or any other, you can use Vimeo, livestream.com. You can use Facebook. You can actually use even LinkedIn. You can use YouTube. You have a lot of options available. So the people who are teaching the class can give a consistent user experience through Brushfire, but they can use whatever is their personal preference. So again, you have a lot of different requirements he took into account in terms of selecting a platform. So this is the most flexible platform, meeting requirements for the end users, for the instructors, and then also to handle things like registration and tracking, and then integration with links and other types of systems. So they were able to pick something where it meets all those requirements at the same time. Instead of something where it's only doing maybe one type of scenario, they can only use it for a conference, but not for an educational seminar, or it's only designed for Sunday service and doesn't take into account that you actually have not just one church and that one church's process for recording, but taking into account you have multiple instructors who use different tools with different levels of technology familiarity. So again, within that, not being a part of that thought process, but understanding what type of requirements were necessary. You can go through that same type of discussion when you engage with the Technology Commission. And so, and so just recapping what we do for design thinking. So really empathize so you understand exactly what's necessary for the community you're serving, or for your audience, or for the users here that we define as the people who are on the receiving end of what you're providing. And again, since this is really focused on sustaining the church and the church mission, and so this is again focusing on evangelism and discipleship and getting out the gospel. Those are the the primary mechanisms of we're doing all this in order to do that, basically. So it's not just the case where it's a requirement for maybe just one piece or a certain type of technology focus, but it's in the context of the broader mission of the church. And so then you define it from the point of view, you ideate, you prototype, and then you test and iterate. So one thing that we will emphasize is really planning on the testing and iteration with the different communities, because you will get different feedback depending on what's there. And so those of you in the class also have seen this, where if I had links for Google Meet, some of you are familiar with it, so you're able to get in without any issue. Some, it might have been your first time with Meet. So one thing we could do is set up like a prep session, just so you can do a trial run to see, are you able to get in? Are you the permissions on your browser? Are you able to get the mic and get the the video set up? So this is something I would say in the future we would probably have a kind of a pre-class session, just to make sure we can make sure every setting is available properly on that when you're testing. So so it's okay. Like, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get the ideas out there so you can get feedback. Now, when you're thinking about this next step where we want to come up with your action plan, you want to do strategic planning aligned with the mission. So and so besides the church or with the ministry, so if you were doing foreign missions, you're going to have different needs compared to home missions. And then we think about your current use of technology, and then what are the gaps. So let's say right now you may have actually the discussion with Frank Dove is a good example of this. So we understood like what type of technologies were in use, what was set up, but then you identify where the gaps are, where would you like to improve and understand, and then we look at what's the future need for the people, the process, and technology. So do you need someone to be responsible? Is there a gap in terms of the roles? Or is it just a matter of skill or access to certain tools, or just a process we need to have in place? So what are those future needs? And so I'm not going to pause for 5 minutes right now for brainstorming, but I want to ask you to, again, think about this in terms of your future plans. What are some of the things that you think you might need? And this could be the same or different from your other ideation exercises and design thinking. But put in the ideas and feedback form additional needs, and think about the people, process, and technology part. And then I'm going to give you an example. So Pastor Tyler Prude is one of the instructors in the convention with the technology class, making computer technology work for the church a few years ago. I think it might have been the 2016. It was a few years ago. I took his class, and it was extremely informative, because hearing some of this from the perspective of a pastor also leads you into the thought process, looking at things holistically from a church perspective. And this was, again, prior to coronavirus, but his use case here is still relevant now, since more people are also doing things that are online only or hybrid formats. So when you think about it, so identifying the need, And then, for an example, so let's say if someone did it, this is an example where there's a need that's actually a gap identified in terms of understanding when something is happening. And this is, unfortunately, this is fairly common. Or at least in my experience, it's common. Not it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's usually a surprise and you remember it. So I do know, maybe being different places or visiting and then realizing someone may have been having a revival and I didn't know about it, or someone might have been having like a Women's Day service, and maybe they sent a letter to our church. It might not have been an email or something else, but there was a letter, and then so there was a letter that might have been copied and may have been posted on the bulletin board. But if I don't actually see it and actually walk past or see that letter, I personally may not have known about it. Although someone it may have been communicated. And so this is why, or it could be the case it's posted on the church website. But if you're someone who doesn't actually go to the website all the time, then you didn't see it on the calendar necessarily. So again, there are different reasons why things may be, something where there's information missing or someone missed an event. But this is just one example of defining a requirement. Churchline is one of the local places to publish events. You may have something different in your region. Again, there are different websites that people use to share events in their local cities, and so this was just an example of, okay, we can post that. But one thing I think is useful is to look at Pastor Tyler Prude's example, because this is something that I have seen implemented. So at Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, with Reverend Dr. Amos C. Brown, the ushers there are also doing this, where the ushers are able to serve in a different capacity when it's not just an in-person service. So in Third Baptist, if you go to the live stream, you will get a greeting. But the greeting is coming from the usher. In this case, the Smile team. This is a very good use case because they're able to gather information. Now, this is something they're doing in person, but think about the same in terms of how they are gathering information if someone is visiting in person. But you can also do this in a remote standpoint, because you can have a form. You can use a Google form or something else if you want to have people optionally opt into sharing contact information with you, so you can follow up with them in the future. So the ushers and the Smile team are used as the people to gather this information. Because they're the ones who are initially there doing the greeting. So it's natural for them to gather information from the visitors, and then they can send it to the church secretary and the others in the membership committee. But in terms of that first line of contact, this makes it efficient, because some people, when it comes to in-person service, you may have some people who, for whatever reason, they just don't feel comfortable standing up when someone says, well, all visitors stand up. So there may be someone who's visiting a church, but you just don't know. And maybe you want to invite them back. There may be something relevant for them, but it's someone who might be missed. But if you have the people who are there in the front line, they can do that. They can again connect. So it's not something that the secretary has to do later on. If you do have cards or things you're collecting in service, if you have visitors who stand and introduce themselves, you can also have the ushers capture this using on a tablet or on their phone. So that Google form or whatever form can be used to capture the information, and then it can be saved as a file afterwards instead of just paper. But if you are doing it on paper, you can always scan it and make it available afterwards. But basically, once you've gathered information, and again, be clear about how you're using it, all those other caveats for these security and privacy of these individuals, Again, when it comes to collecting things like birthday, if you collect birthday in addition to name and address, that's very sensitive, personally identifiable information that can be misused by people for identity theft. So you want to be really clear about how you are protecting that information and saving it. And so, so once you have this saved securely, then what he has at the church is that they follow up. And so when you think about it, sometimes if you have visitors who share their information with you, just think, do you have a process in place to follow up? So this is where it's not just the technology, it's the people, a process and technology. So in this case, besides the process to gather information, they have a process for follow-up where they can have a thank you for visiting us, message or email or letter, whatever preferred form of communication they may have there. So some people may really appreciate getting a physical letter in the mail or a postcard because maybe they just get, they may think that the emails are automated, so they when they see a personal touch with a letter, they may appreciate it. Others, again, this might be a direct text message or a direct email. Or you may use something like Constant Contact if you're just sending a notification to a larger list. And then you can use social media or follow up on Facebook or Twitter. Again, but you have to be mindful of how they're sharing the information with you, and mindful of how you're allowed to use their information, and just securing the information. But this example from Pastor Prude's church is relevant because this is something everyone has to work with. Everyone has to deal with visitors or people who might be members who may not have been active and they're attending again. So this is just one example. So we did some open discussion a little earlier, so I'm going to skip over this now. And I am going to go back to one of the earlier slides here just to recap that we want you to create your own action plan. And so think about the people, the technology and process available, and what you're doing from that standpoint. What's necessary. And then I want to also share with you one last thing before we go. And I'm just going to share with you information on this YouTube channel. Instead of getting this from the YouTube channel I'm using today, I'll be sharing the links to this information, updated in the syllabus or in the main contact information. But I want you to see that there are a couple of playlists. So one is Zoom on YouTube. And then there's another that's How to Zoom. How to Zoom is actually a playlist from the Zoom team. Many of you had a lot of questions about Zoom. So, and you also had questions about things around backgrounds, breakout rooms, the interactions and polling. So what I did was I just saved the playlist from Zoom for How to Zoom. And the main thing I'll call out to you is just understand if you're in a Zoom meeting or a personal room versus a webinar. And then I created a playlist myself where I just did a couple of, it's not all of them, but just a subset of some videos that I thought would be relevant. And I would say the webinar one is one I'm just going to call out because I have seen some cases where people may be using a personal room for events instead of using, setting up as a webinar or some other ways. And there are some limitations to the number of attendees in some cases, and you may hit the limits. The settings are different. So just being mindful of understanding the difference between a Zoom meeting and a Zoom room and a webinar, when to use them. In some cases, you may just be using just a regular meeting, and so that should be fine. Or if it's like a reusable one, you just do the usual meeting. There are other cases where you want to use a webinar, and then how to use that with Facebook. Some of you had questions about that. So just wanted to make sure you understood that you'll be getting that information available when we're moving forward in the class and during the discussion group, but then also before the end of the session, you'll be getting links to that information in an updated document. So again, I'll see if we'll just update the official syllabus. Otherwise, it'll be a separate message with the links. So I want to just pause here for a moment to see if there are any other questions. I didn't see any other questions in the Brushfire chat or in the YouTube chat. And so I'm just going to ask Frank Dove to just unmute for a brief moment to say if you have any other questions or any areas for follow-up, either to follow up on during the discussion group or any other resources or links you'd like to see. And then I'll make sure I capture that, and then we can move forward with that.
No, Corey, I don't have anything else. I just want to thank you for your time and your research on providing us information, and we look forward to reviewing those links.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you for being in the class. And then I will be sharing other information around digital skills and other learning opportunities there are a bunch of free resources being provided by Google. So some of those are going to be useful for different segments of your population. So I want to make sure that's available. So we'll be seeing more of that today in the discussion group, and then some of the other links. But yeah, so thanks a lot. I'm going to conclude the session now. But thanks a lot for attending. And then this will be available on demand, very shortly for recap. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.